Well, I just recently retired from the Emmanuel community, from Tabitha Hospice, which is part of the Emmanuel communities, and I'm just so proud of that. Um, as bereavement coordinator, what I would be doing would be each week I had a list of families that I needed to call on a rotating basis, checking up on them. These were families who had a loved one on our hospice, and for a period of time, we would be keeping close touch with them. We sent monthly mailings for 13 months. I would also do a yearly bereavement, a memorial service, and it would be at different times of the year, but those are the things that I did, and hopefully I can bring a little bit of experience and just an opportunity for you folks to hear today that, yeah, what I'm experiencing, it is normal. I am okay. As we get, before I change that, so I've been working in a medical environment for years and years, and those nurses always put all their initials after their names. Well, the reason why I love doing that is because my first one's BM. I love saying that to people, but for me it was music, okay? Just a little starter today. As Jody said, today is not a grief support group. It's a learning opportunity. We'll talk more at the end about forming a grief support group. But your presence here today also does not commit you to future gatherings for that. I just want you to sit back and relax. There's no input of personal experiences will be asked of you today. I have paper and pencils at all the tables. I would request that if you have some questions or if you have some comments, maybe want to share some experiences, you make a note to yourself. We're going to do those all together at the end of today's session. I think I probably put a 4-hour presentation together, and I'm going to try to do this within the hour. Maybe not, but at the same time, we'll save questions. Make a note to yourself if there's anything you want to be sure to remember, or if there's any comments you want to make, questions on me, just go ahead and make notes to yourself. And then I also wanted to just offer this. Sometimes people are experiencing very heavy sadness and maybe even trauma from the topics that I'll be covering today. If you feel the need to get up and leave, that's okay. Please touch base with Jody just so that we know you're okay. But sometimes as we hear these topics, it just feels too soon for us to explore them. And I truly honor that. I also want to let you know we can handle tears. We can handle tears. If anything brings you to tears today, I just want you to know that it's okay to remain. But if you feel the need to get up and leave, just let Jody know so that we know you're okay. And I want each one of you to know that you are an honored, loved, and respected guest here today. I have goals for us today. I hope that you have an opportunity to learn new insights on your grief. And I also hope that you learn there is no wrong way to grieve unless you're going to hurt yourself or unless you're going to hurt someone else. Now, that's a mantra I picked up from the Collective for Hope in Omaha, and that's a wonderful secular organization that does grief support. If you want to know more about it, I can get information to you afterwards today. I also have my own mantra that I wish to share with you right now, and I'll probably say it a few times across it. And that is, I'm going to be teaching you some things today, but I want you to know that there is a huge distance between the head and your heart when it comes to grief. So just because you've heard some things before, don't feel there's anything wrong with yourself because you're not following it. That distance between the head and the heart can be miles, miles in grief. And I wish I could say otherwise, but I will not heal grief with today's presentation. Grief is not a disease that follows a medical model where the doctor assesses you, makes a care plan, and then they follow the care plan resulting in the healing. No, grief's a journey. It's not a disease. So my goal for you is to gain understanding that helps you accept that your grief is normal, because grief does hurt and you're not going crazy. Many of the times when I was on the phone with families that I would do follow-ups with, people would say, I'm doing this, 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 and this. Am I going crazy? It's like, no, this is grief. It hurts. So as I said, I'd be going through several topics in today's presentation. We'll spend a few moments on what grief looks and feels like. We'll be talking about the many kinds of griefs, many kinds of losses, myths and realities of grieving, styles of grieving, and then various grief theories and models. You know, we're going beyond that Kubler-Ross 5 stages, and I'll give honor to that in a few moments, but there's a lot more out there than just that. We'll be talking about needs of mourning from Dr. Alan Wolfelt and the journey of grief from Dr. Kenneth Doka. And as I talk about each one of these people, I will be giving just a little bit of background bio for them. But you know, we're here in church, and I want to start with a devotion. Those of you that know me know that music's probably the best way that I can express my faith. And this is a lovely song that's in our hymn books upstairs. It's All Creation Sings. It's hymn number 1050. It is a lament. You'll recognize the tune as Wayfaring Stranger, but it has different words to it. But the lament is similar to what, and I'll get back to this topic, the laments in the Psalms, because it starts out with deep sadness. But by the end of the song, it recognizes God's presence in this sadness.
Sometimes our only song is weeping, our only sound is gasping breath. Sometimes it seems that God is sleeping, while our brief lives are bound in death. Who hears the song our sorrows swallow, and offers hope to calm our fears, when all our words seem frail and hollow? God heeds the prayers within our tears. Sometimes we catch the faintest humming, a far-off tune our hearts know well. Sometimes we sense the Spirit coming, our song returns, our voices swell. The Spirit sings, though we are shaken, and Christ has shared our heartfelt cries, restored our weary God's song that never dies.
Again, that's a lament, and it honors our sorrows, but it also points to the hope and the knowledge that God is following us through these times of sadness. We'll come back to this idea of lament a little bit later in our presentation, but I wanted to just start out honoring the 5 stages of grief. We're not going to stay with this topic very long, but it was Elizabeth Kubler-Ross wrote the book in 1969 on death and dying, and it was actually the first popular book that went across and it made an attempt to explain grief. What got misinterpreted is that the grief that she was attempting to explain is the grief of hearing of your own death. It ended up getting applied to others' grief. But it also tends to be used in a form that is very limiting. We do not go from stage 1 to stage 2 to stage 3 to stage 4 to stage 5. I remember that when I took some college classes, I would remember the acronym DABDA, D-A-B-D-A, so that I could spell all these out when needed during the test, because I knew it would come. But I just wanted to say it's a starting point, but there's a lot more information out there than that. One of my teachers through learning about grief is this Dr. Don Eisenhower. He offered classes a couple of years ago through the Nebraska Synod. I took a long-term course through him on coaching grief. And one of the books that he puts out is this one that shows up on the screen. It's called Coach Yourself Through Grief. He is the founder of Coaching at End of Life. Dr. Don Eisenhower is a pastor, a chaplain, and a master certified grief coach. He's the author of several training books on grief. This is one of them. What I like about this book is the use of the cover as a metaphor for grief. And just want you to think, raise your hand or shout it out. This picture could be considered a representation of grief. Do you see anything in this picture that reminds you of what you've experienced in grief?
Yes.
And what?
It depends on whether you're going up or down the stairs.
And you do both in grief, don't you? Mm-hmm.
Sometimes your steps are heavy.
Mm-hmm.
Like the step that has lots of sand on it.
What's it like walking through sand? You're stuck, pulled back. Yeah. Very tiresome.
Hard to clean it up, too.
It's hard to clean up. How about the top of it? Do you see where it goes?
Nowhere.
No.
Who knows? Who knows? Yeah.
I see it though as there's blue skies. Like there's still hope to come. There's still blue skies.
There is.
Like if you're going up, you're gonna see blue skies. That there's hope.
One thing I've also appreciated in this picture are the handrails. There's help en route. Yeah. There is hope. We will be talking more about grief and hope today. The next book I'd like to talk about, our authors are Kenneth Mitchell and Herbert Anderson. This book, All Our Griefs, All Our Losses. There's lots of losses to be grieved on. It's not just the death of a loved one. But this book, when I took chaplaincy training, and that's called CPE, Clinical Pastoral Ed, I'll be mentioning it a time or two in this session, but when I took my chaplaincy training in 1999, this book was referenced to me, and the information in it is still very current from the pastoral theological approach to grief. Kenneth Mitchell was a pastoral counselor, professor of pastoral care at Eden Theological Seminary in St. Louis prior to his death in 1991. And Herbert Anderson is retired research professor in practical theology at Pacific Lutheran Seminary, Berkeley, California. He is the author, co-author of many books and articles. This book is still available through Amazon. But the thesis, one of the theses in his book, the main one, is that grief is our response to a combination of attachment and separation. And Pastor Tim kind of pointed toward that in his sermon today. You know, our very first experience of grief is birth, because we were attached and warm and safe in our mother's womb, and suddenly we're not there anymore. So there really is no life without either attachment or loss. But there are lots of losses. Can you think of anything that can cause a grief besides a death?
Job loss.
Job loss.
Moving.
Moving.
Divorce.
Divorce. Changing. Yes.
Serious injury.
Yes. Because it changes your life. Yes.
Broken friendships.
Broken friendships. Many losses, many griefs. On page 44, 45 of that book, there's a beautiful reference that I like to make, and that says, any form of loss is at its root experience a loss of a part of yourself. You know, sometimes we diminish our grief because the loss is not related to a death. However, the authors suggest, and this is so beautiful, I think, our attachment to objects other than human beings is an affirmation of our linkage with the whole of creation that God has given us as a sacred trust. So to be human is to be a griever of all kinds of losses. All kinds. You know, another one of their theses along with that is, please do not try to rank your loss as less than somebody else's because of whatever it is they're going through. My next one is a trick question. What's the cause of grief that is the worst? What's the cause of grief that it's the worst? So my answer is, it's the one you're experiencing right now, okay? The one you are experiencing is the worst loss. Again, don't rank yourself. Yeah. You are important. Your loss is important. Now, sometimes, not everybody, but sometimes in our losses, people feel either anger at God or abandonment from God, or both. And sometimes people feel this and sometimes they don't. And as I was starting to say, many of the topics in this presentation, I could do the whole hour's presentation on the topic. I'm just going to briefly hit this one from the reference of this book. Thinking about anger at God. I do want to say that's okay. It's a normal feeling. You know, when I took that CPE, clinical pastoral education, that idea was pushed at us time and time again. It's okay to be mad at God. It's okay. God can handle it. But I was very frustrated in hearing that because it never went any farther. It's like, okay, so I'm angry at God, and that's okay. Now what? Now what? And don't just leave me hanging out there. And for me, the answer came later on. Later on. I found my answer. I found my answer through the lament psalms. And there's many psalms in the Bible that are called lament psalms. If you have a study Bible, there's probably somewhere in your Bible where it lists all of them. Examples are 51, 55, 64. During the Lenten season, we often hear, my God, why have you forsaken me? That's a lament psalm. Okay. Jesus was very mad at God right then. What is helpful about the lament psalms is as you read through them, they start out with the psalm writer crying, yelling, shaking fist at God. And as you read on through most of those psalms, by the end of the psalm, you can tell that the writer has experienced hope, has experienced God's presence, is perhaps praising God for being there and helping through that time. But what's very important to me is there's one psalm that doesn't end that way, and that's Psalm 88. There is a deep, deep sadness the songwriter is experiencing as the psalm writer goes through that psalm. And that never changes all the way through the psalm and to the very end of it. And that is what gives me hope, because for all of the edits of the Bible that happened over the years, and all the books that were in and pulled back out, and the psalms that were in and pulled back out, that psalm remained. Because we don't always see the resolution to our sadness at a time when we feel we need it. But God is still there. God is still there. So that's the resolution that worked for me for that answer of anger at God. Yeah, it's okay. God can handle it, fine. But what about me? But what about me? And again, we could spend the whole hour talking on that topic. Another topic that we could spend the whole hour on is feeling abandoned by God. And that too is a normal human response. As a matter of fact, taking a look back to that hymn that I just played, the text of stanza 2 reminds us of the hope that is in Christ. Again, the words say, sometimes we catch the faintest humming, a far-off tune our hearts know well. Sometimes we sense the Spirit's coming. Our song returns, our voices swell. The Spirit sings though we are shaken, and Christ has shared our heartfelt cries. Restored, our weary souls awaken to join God's song that never dies. So there is hope, and there are comings and goings in grief. We can go up and down the stairs, we go up and down the roller coaster, but God is following us through that. Another topic that I wanted to go through today. Grief is a journey. Dr. Kenneth Doka, PhD, I just learned of him a year ago. I listened in on a day-long presentation of his. He is a professor emeritus from the College of New Rochelle and Senior Vice President of the Grief Program for the Hospice Foundation America. He is a prolific author on grief, and he's actually an ordained Lutheran minister. There are two topics that I wish to address from his book today. One of them contrasts the myths of grief versus the reality. And later, after that, I'll be talking about his ideas on the styles of grieving. So his first myth, and I think he has 6 or 7 of them that he listed in his book. The myth is that grief is a predictable process. I mean, aren't all illnesses predictable, and you do this, you do that, and you're done, and you walk on and life's fine. But grief's not an illness. Grief is not predictable, and grief is very individual. People have asked me, well, what's wrong with me? I seem to be getting worse than better. And I like to think of grief more as a bowl of tangled spaghetti noodles than a stair-step of continuous improvement. Most people experience roller coaster emotions. And those roller coaster emotions don't stop on month 12, month 13th, or year 2. They come back. They come back. Our second myth is that there's a timetable to grief. Very often, the beginning of the journey of grief is not the hardest. Later, after the company has left and the immediate tasks are done, that's when it hits and the loneliness sets in. In one of my bereavement phone calls with Tabitha, I was talking with the wife, the spouse of the deceased. And she said, my daughter is so worried about me because 3 months later, I'm still crying every day. And I listened to her a while, and when she finally caught her breath of air, I said, how long were you married? And she said, 65 years. 3 months against 65 years. No, there's no timetable. There isn't. The hope is, and the promise is that bad days will come less often. And they'll become less intense, and they will not last as long. But in grief, we don't get off the roller coaster. We learn how to live with it, and we incorporate it into our lives. While I'm mentioning that daughter and her mother, something else that I've noticed, and this has been it's happened time and time again, and that is when there is a death in a family of an elderly person and there's a spouse that remains, the adult children of that family have 2 kinds of grief going on. One is the grief for their deceased father or mother, and the other one is their grief for the parent that is left and is grieving. And it's a little hard to untangle those 2 griefs, and there's no need to, but just acknowledge that there's more than just the death of the loved one that one grieves. There's a lot of other reasons. Third one that Dr. Doka talks about is that grief is all about letting go. You've let go if you're resolved your grief. And the reality is we retain a continuing bond to our loved one. And why would we not want to? I mean, letting go just doesn't work in grief for humans. Why would we want to forget our loved one? But as your pain diminishes, you will have a greater ability to gain access to your memories. And one of the main tasks of mourning is to decide how to carry those memories forward and those feelings, carry them forward with you in a way that still allows you to re-energize taking part in life. You're incorporating it into your life. And one of the first signs that you're doing better is when you can laugh at a story of the person you so deeply miss. And that laughter is wonderful. Never, ever feel that you are being wronged by laughing about your grief or laughing about a story. It was perfect. Oh, the concept of closure is very close to the concept of letting go. And actions like a funeral or getting an autopsy to answer questions are helpful in making steps toward healing, but they do not bring the emotions to a close. Again, grief's not an illness for which we recover or an event on a way to a destination. You know, you're climbing stairs, but you don't know where that's going. Okay. No single act or a combination of acts will change that. And again, grief's about learning to live with the loss. Oh, we're getting close to this. We need to process the loss to reach resolution. All these things we need to do. I hate that word. But we grieve the way we are naturally wired. And some people are more expressive and some people are less expressive. So just please do not apply limits to how you or someone else grieves. We'll come back to that topic in a few minutes, but for a moment, can I add just a little bit of humor to the stereotype of men's reaction to grief? You know, in our stereotypes, we think that women are the ones that cry and show all the feelings, and the men are the stoic ones. Again, that's a stereotype. It varies, all right? Sometimes when I ask a man how he's doing, I hear the response, "I'm fine." We could put the acronym FINE, F-I-N-E, to feelings inside never expressed, F-I-N-E. And that can apply to any of us, okay? Please do understand that. But again, that mantra, there is no wrong way to grieve. And you know, I want to think about the more people there are in a family, the more ways you're going to see people grieve. And the more apt it is to irritate each other. All right? But we all grieve in our own way. And Dr. Doka will be telling us more about those different ways in a moment. And I hate the word resilience. But so myth 6 says humans are naturally resilient to grief. And the reality is humans may be resilient to experiencing loss, yet find grief difficult and even disabling. Well, you know, again, it varies, all right? Some people are more naturally resilient to grief because they've experienced fewer significant losses. They have a strong support system, and that support system may include their faith. And other people can be less resilient because significant losses have never happened, or they've happened really close together. Others can be less resilient because it happens close together, or there isn't that strong support system, or the loss causes financial difficulties, or perhaps there's also personal health issues going on at the same time. One of the people that I did phone calls to for a while had her second husband died at the same time she herself was going through cancer treatments. So like, don't talk to me about resilience. That's just not nice. So when should we look for a therapist? Sometimes I get asked that. When should I look for a therapist? I've been in grief for a long time. Well, the first answer is when you want one. All right? There should be no difference in going to a therapist for help than there is in going to a doctor for the flu. It's that simple. There's no difference. And please do not consider cost a barrier, especially in this community. At UNO, they have a student therapy organization that is supervised by the teachers. And they use a scale of cost, including zero cost for therapy. So there is no reason why someone should avoid getting a therapist's help if they feel it is important. And if you feel totally brought down by your loss, can't function day to day, you keep going back to the same thing time after time, there's no reason not to go to a therapist. A therapist can be very helpful. Okay. Just please do not talk yourself out of a therapist's help if you feel you should get one. Sometimes people have told me that it's been easier to accept the death after the prolonged illness. Well, every loss is difficult, every loss. And again, everyone reacts in their own way. And sometimes what we grieve throughout a long illness are all the losses associated to that illness. All of the losses, the fact that the loved one we are taking care of is losing capabilities on a day-by-day basis. And then after all that, when the loved one dies, we're now mourning their absence. Okay. All deaths are difficult, and we all respond in different ways and at different times. And I will never tell somebody, you're grieving wrong, if they tell me that I'm through my grief now because I did it for this past 2 years. I will just say, I'm glad it's working out for you. I'm glad it's working out for you. We're now moving into that topic of different ways people grieve. And again, that does seem to be one of the most frequent causes of family conflict after death. I mean, tell me if you haven't heard phrases like, he isn't allowing himself to grieve, he went back to work the day after. Or, all she does is sit around and cry, doesn't get anything done. Now, perhaps I've just spoken some more gender stereotypes, and it definitely does vary. But families, especially the more people in the family, the more responses there are to grieving and the more different ways people grieve. He showed up, she didn't show up. He did this, she didn't do this. I'm doing this and that's just right, but look at him. No. Again, there's no wrong way to grieve. And Dr. Doka has identified grieving styles. And this might help us to identify ourselves on this journey. Now, there's a complex survey that I could give to you for you to decide whether you're a heart griever, a head griever, maybe a combination or neither of the two. But it's my guess that you already know. You already know yourself, okay? Heart grieving. That's where we respond to everything very emotionally. Crying, sad, withdrawing. Yeah. Heart on the shirt sleeves kind of person. That's me. That's me, okay? And what can be helpful if you are a heart griever is to find someone, a friend, a group, a therapist who can explore those emotions with you. You don't need to be a licensed therapist to offer listening support and loving support. Now, when I say these styles of grieving are on a continuum, not a box, there are 4 kinds of grieving that I noted. Don't think of them as the 4 quadrants of a box, okay? Think of it as a line with head at one end and heart at the other. and we kind of move around through them. The head grievers, those are the head grievers are the ones that get all the anger from the heart grievers. But with a head griever, you go through things cognitively, or you just do things. One of my aunts, she shined in how to do the next task and get everything done, and to just have everything ready for all of us heart grievers. And that was really wonderful. What's helpful in this, if you find yourself being a head griever, returning to your routine as soon as possible is helpful. Also, planning the memorial activities, or planning ways that you're going to celebrate the next anniversary or holiday. All of these, just planning is a way that you grieve, and that's acceptable, okay? Sometimes, and once again, I talked about a continuum. Sometimes we are both a heart and a head griever. And that can be dependent upon the style of grieving is a single loss, or perhaps between losses because of different relationships. The relationship I had with my dad is different than the relationship I had with my mother. Thus, with my dad, I was able to play for the funeral of my dad, but there's no way I could play for the funeral of my mom. I love both of them, but I was on a different place on that scale through that. What's helpful, whatever makes you feel good in trying to move forward. If it's doing a task, if it's taking a day to just sit and cry, that's okay. That's okay for a head and a heart griever. And people vary by different deaths or within the same grieving period of one person, just depending on what's going on in your life at that time. You may vary. The most difficult of those four is the heart versus the head griever. Think about the farmer's wife who has always had to just suck up her emotions and couldn't share them because she was in this farming environment and just nobody around that she could share it with. And she was, maybe even as a child, she was told, don't cry, you're stronger than that. So it is hard if you are having some kind of a guilt reaction within yourself of grieving, but you want to be grieving. So the symptom of a head versus and heart griever is the emotion's intense, but there's that desire to suppress it. So there's a strategy about dosing your emotions, like dose the fire, dose this, dose that. Now, when I took CPE, my clinical pastoral ed, my supervisor had this lovely little story about dosing grief. And she said, imagine this chest of drawers, and you have this little package where you put your grief into it. Close it up, put it in a dresser drawer for a while. And then later, when you're ready to face that grief again, pull out that package. Open it up, caress it, live with it for a while, cry over it, and then put the lid back on, put it back into the dresser drawer for another time. That's called dosing your grief. You have some control in when you choose to grieve if you are a heart versus a head griever. I have a lovely illustration of that. It's a 2-3 minute video This lady is, this lady, her name is known, her name is Scar, S-C-A-R, underbar poetry. You can find her online if you want to. She is an award-winning poet in Kenya who writes of love, loss, social justice. A lot of her poems focus on African women, firstborn daughters, and the struggles inherent in healing and reconciliation. This is a lovely poem. Sometimes she might be a little difficult to hear, but she is, I won't talk anymore. I'm just going to have this play.
She has found me open. I am not surprised this time. I look at the door with half a smile. Hello, old friend. Welcome. I have kept your cup in the door under the kitchen sink. You can join me and have this tea. I don't know why you're visiting this time, but I have sat with you long enough to know you are not my foe. Welcome, grief. Sit at the table. Make yourself some tea. I have not thrown away any of your favorite clothes or the slippers you like to wear every time you're around. Welcome, grief. I have learned you, and in knowing you, I am not afraid. Your waters will not break my heart. In this place, you and I will both find release. Welcome, grief. Stay as long as you like. Come again if you must, for though we are not friends, we are not foes. For though we are not friends, you have taught me so much, so stay. I will make us some tea, some chamomile to calm our hearts, and we will sit by the window and talk, and you will tell me what hurts, dear friend. You will show me where it hurts the most. You will teach me, my love, what needs healing. I know you. Be still. Let me examine your body. Show me the wounds, honey. Show me the tears. There are no worries. Here you are safe. Here you are safe. Open. Tell me where it hurts. Tell me what needs healing. Peace. I will not turn you away, grief. Look me in the face. I am not afraid of your tears, of your wells, of the rain. Peace, be still. You are welcome here. And when you have healed and your smile cracks through your tears, if you want, you can leave. Or you can stay a little longer still, and we will sit by the fire. I will make us some hibiscus tea, and you will tell me how it feels to carry the heart of the world. Peace, grief. You are welcome here, because here we grieve, but we do not drown. We grieve, but we do not drown.
Lovely, isn't that? Yeah. And again, you can find her name on the internet by going Scar, S-C-A-R, underbar poetry. So that kind of talks about those 4 styles of grieving. We're getting on in our time. I wanted to spend just a little bit more time on a couple of different ideas. Our next author, Alan Wolfelt, he's founder and director of the Center for Loss and Transformation. It's a grief education retreat center on the edge of Fort Collins, Colorado. And he's a prolific author. His major thesis is to companion the bereaved, to walk alongside and offer listening space. So Jody and I are planning a 12-week grief support group based on Alan Wolfelt's materials to start in January. More information will be coming on that, but as an introduction to Dr. Wolfelt's materials, here's a list of 6 needs of mourning that he talks about. Some of this we've already talked about today, but he says it's important and it's a need to acknowledge the reality of the death. I know that after my oldest brother died, There were times I'd be walking in a crowd and I'd see my brother off over to the side. That's a normal reaction. Or there's one ad on TV, and I can't remember what it has to do with. I think it's one of those insurance ads, but several people pop up and pop down on the screen, and one of them looks just like Rich. I'm like, he's over there. No. The reality is Rich died. Rich died. And embracing the pain of the loss. We just talked about the 4 ways of grieving. And at some point, it's important for us to embrace that pain. We don't necessarily have to take it all at one time, because that is so overwhelming. That's why that idea of dosing your grief can be helpful. We remember the person who died. We tell stories. We have memorial services. We have pictures. It's okay to keep the pictures up of your loved one. Talk about them with family, especially in upcoming holidays. Share those favorite stories. Laugh over them. One of the very hard things to do that we haven't talked about at all today is developing that new self-identity. A wife is now a widow. A husband's now a widower. A sister doesn't have her oldest brother anymore. After my parents' death, one of my close friends asked me, what is it like to be an adult orphan? I never thought of that before. But you're continually moving forward, but you keep the identity of where you were, but using that in your new identity. And there's no one that can tell you how to do that or how long it's going to take. But you can definitely have friends and others walk alongside you through that time. And it's so important to search for meaning. And my meaning isn't going to be your meaning, and your meaning isn't going to be your daughter's meaning, and your daughter's meaning isn't going to be her brother's meaning. But it's what's important to you. And we tell those stories over and over again as we search for meaning. And then somebody once, I asked a pastor once, how often are we going to hear those same stories? And it's until the person who's telling them has reached a meaning, has found the meaning. And it's okay to tell those same stories over and over. And it's ever so important for us to receive ongoing support from others. Again, we don't need a degree in therapy to be a love support to a friend, a love support to our parents, to be a listening ear. Jody and I are not therapy gurus. We are people who are willing to spend time listening and engaging on your grief. I'm actually winding down better than I thought. One of the last topics that I wanted to go through, and this one again was by Kenneth Doka. He uses the phrase journey of grief. And as I've talked about today, it is personal and individual. But what I haven't talked about is grief is more than an emotion. There are physical, there are behavioral, cognitive, social, and spiritual reactions to grief. We talked about some of the spiritual reactions. Cognitive, when my dad died, my mom was staying with John and me in a little apartment in Iowa City, and talking about cognitive issues. She was very upset, of course, and every time she got ready to leave her apartment, she'd walk into a closet. You know, and at 21, I really wasn't as helpful to her as I would hope to be now, but yeah, cognitive. Social. You know, those close friends of yours, they're all still in couples, and I'm not in a couple anymore. How do I do that? Another one, we talked about grief is not about letting go, but secondary losses. You know, there's all sorts of losses beyond the immediate death of a loved one. For some people, it's the loss of where they were able to live. It's a loss of an income. It's a loss of a best friend, but it's also a loss of a helper. Those are losses that need grieving also and working through. And this number 5 is perhaps the hardest one to talk about, because never as someone who is walking alongside a grieving person should you say, you know, sometimes you're going to grow in this. You're going to get better and you're going to be a lot better. No, you don't talk about this. It's so hard to see it now, but I have heard people tell me that, you know, out of this journey of grief, I have gained so much self-confidence, or I have learned a new skill that I never would have even explored. And the thing is, you don't know it until it's hindsight's 2020. And we aren't the ones to tell people about that growth. We can accept it and then we can acknowledge it and we can say bravo when the bereaved person is telling us about it after the fact. But again, there is grace, there is love, there is God's presence through this time. And part of God's presence is allowing us as each other to care and walk that journey with you. The last thing I'm going to do on this presentation is to just throw on the board the references. I talked about them as we went. But Jody, is there anything you'd like to add? Because there's more things coming up. And, oh, do I thank you for just kind of staying with me today on this. It's a tough topic. And again, any one of these topics could have been a whole presentation themselves.